I remember and surrounded by 14 managers all speaking to the owner, and I was one out of the 14 that was saying, no, this doesn't work. It dawned on me that the reason I was quite happy saying no was that I wasn't dependent on that money, whereas a lot of the managers sitting around the table are dependent on their salaries.
So what do you think is the smartest financial decision you've seen a client make?
Smartest financial decision?
Yeah.
They'll say Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos and say, I want to do that, and they just chase money. But you need to be doing something you enjoy doing.
What advice would you give to people running their own business? So this Dear Diary episode is all about becoming a fractional CFO, and we've got Graeme with us. What's your role here now? Director of, or just director?
Just director of projects.
So I thought it'd be a nice little intro just to find out a little bit about your kind of journey.
It's a long and winding journey, to be honest. I mean, if you go right back, I trained at Ernst & Young.
Yeah.
So I worked in the UK and Australia. If you roll that forward, fractional CFO is quite a new term. It's only really been around in the last few years.
Were you doing it before it got cool?
Yeah, I was doing it before LinkedIn, and it became a thing. So about 25 years ago, I got involved in a startup, and then evolved from there into doing what was then interim FD roles.
Right, okay.
So generally the interim roles were where a business, certainly the ones I did, the business was in financial difficulty and they needed extra skills and extra resource to help them get out of that. So I did 4 or 5 of them. I went back into corporate finance for a while, and then started doing full-time FD jobs in a range of property and construction and logistics businesses.
So plenty of different industries to get experience from.
And different sizes. So everything from startup to 300 million multinationals.
Which I'm guessing helped massively when it comes to being able to advise a business, because you've experienced all those different pressure points, I suppose. Yeah,
and then on top of that, I actually bought my own businesses. So I was running my own businesses as an MD and operational. So you've got the advisory side in terms of practice. You've got the in-house finance side in terms of running finance teams and finance departments. And then you've got the ownership piece in terms of owning your own businesses and the sleepless nights and trying to make sure everything's running smoothly.
What was that business?
I had 2. I had Plant Shifters and Surelift, which were all under one banner. So one was a lift and shift business, so it was moving heavy and awkward equipment and putting it into difficult spaces. Another one was effectively an inspection business. So towards the end of 2019, 2020, had come out of them and joined Empowered. And that was about 6 weeks before COVID.
Right, okay.
So all the lockdowns hit. But actually, you say that, lockdown hit, and to me, by that time, I dealt with companies in really difficult financial positions. I'd gone down through probably 3-4 oil downturns. And to me, it was just a big version of an oil downturn. Everyone's going through the same thing. It was the denial, what are we going to do, keeping your heads down, don't want to talk to anyone, and then realising you have to do something. So
getting a plan together.
We could talk through all the clients at the time and actually rank them. So if someone had money to last them had enough cash to last them for 3 months, it was like, right, we don't need to deal with you just now. If it was 6 weeks, it was like, we don't need to deal with you today. Yeah. And if they didn't have any cash, it was right, we need to figure out how we're going to do it. So we prioritized the client base. And then I just used what I was used to doing with businesses in difficulty, or how we reacted when the oil companies started bidding contracts. And it was just a case of, it's almost like an automatic playbook. We just applied it in different circumstances.
So when you're looking at sort of that sort of jump from to when you decided, and I suppose this is the Dear Diary moment, I do want to be a fractional CFO. Yeah. Was it at that point, or was it just before? At which point do you think that this is actually what I want to?
I think ultimately the reason fractional CFO is so appealing is because I get to do the stuff I'm really good at and enjoy doing. And making a difference with clients. But I don't have to do all the other stuff in terms of the process and the application. Yeah. So it's much more project-based. So I get to pick and choose.
Yeah, I suppose the nature of being a CFO anyway is that you would have a team doing that work for you anyway, wouldn't you? So in that respect, it doesn't change too much, I'm guessing.
Only from the point of view that if you were an in-house, you have to manage a team, you do all the appraisals and all the rest of it. Yeah. So and I've got all the admin and everything else, and you still have to deliver a lot of the reporting side. That's reduced on a fractional basis. You're much more operating at a higher level at the strategic, where are we going, how are we taking the business, more often, I guess, if you like.
Okay, so what's the biggest misconception people would have about working with an outsourced CFO, do you think?
I think it's the expectation of what they're going to deliver. And everyone's got different skill sets. Everyone's got different personalities. And I think that some bring in a fractional CFO and expect them to be able to fix the entire business, operations all the way through, on a day a month. And it's like, yes, it is cheaper than hiring a full-time CFO. However, you need to understand what you actually want out of it and what they can actually physically achieve on a day or two days a month. So there's an expectation gap sometimes in terms of what's achievable in the time frame.
Is that almost an expectation when you're working with people that that's their mindset? Or is that...
I think initially when you start, but you have to be pretty clear up front about what's actually achievable within the time frame and within the amount of the budget they're willing to commit to.
So a big part of the sort of when you that initial working with a client as a CFO, I suppose, is around the strategy day. So do you want to talk around that a little bit more?
So actually, we've got one coming up tomorrow. And what we're looking at the strategy day is really where is the business now and where does it want to go? Now, that's quite easy to just say that off the cuff, but we look at the 5 key drivers within a business. Now, that will be around the customer and products. Where are they? Are they just introducing new products? Are they established? Are they mature and actually looking for replacements? How's the supply chain and how do they deliver those services to get them to the customer? What's the management structure like? Is it very hands-on owners, or is it a well-defined management team that can work autonomously from the owner? How's the business funded? Is it all self-funded? Has it got a lot of debt? Does it need more money to grow? And then ultimately, what's the position in terms of wealth?
I would imagine when you're working with the business as well, because obviously businesses are in a journey regardless, but actually when you break down a business in different areas, some businesses are really strong, normally around the core product. Yeah. But then different areas can be they could have a really strong management team but really weak systems, or they could have a succession issue, or the way that the business is structured. So I suppose you've got to so I'm fully aware I'm doing a lot of van signals here. Yeah. You've got to work out probably quite quickly at which stage the business is at, kind of across a number of fronts, don't you? Yeah,
so we've got a framework for looking at that, and which we use on the strategy days, and it's generally how the businesses evolve over the life cycle, and ideally every part, sales, supply, management, funding, all move together, but the reality is they don't, as you say.
No. I mean, I suppose it mirrors the way that sort of Northern Accountants has sort of developed over the years. So like when I came in, obviously I could see what we were very strong at. I could see where the weaknesses are, but you can't attack everything all at once, can you? So you've I think the first thing that we looked at was probably the business system side of things. So, and I know that that's the core part of what you will look at around, I suppose you do it around the accounting digitization, don't you? But that's what we looked at.
But even management reporting. So, I take an extreme example. I feel like, a lot of business owners, we jokingly say to them they want to take over the world. Yeah. So that's fine. You want to...
Rightly so.
But you want to set up overseas, for example, as an extreme. But if you as an owner make every decision at every level...
Yeah, you'll become a bottleneck.
But how do you remote manage? Yeah. It's easy when it's one office, one small team, but if you've got multiple offices, multiple teams, you can't manage that. So you need to put structures in place. So it's like we need to hold our expansion plans and let the management and systems catch up to make it scalable.
So I suppose when you've done that strategy day, obviously I can imagine there's an awful lot that comes out of that in terms of Obviously, long-term strategies.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it's the kind of classic short, medium, long-term
Yeah.
way. So, sort of what are you going to do this month or this quarter? What are you going to do this year? What are you going to do in the next 5 years? I'm a big believer of a 5-year plan, and I would imagine that's how but it's you've obviously then got to put an action plan in place, haven't you?
So on the back of it, we're looking at what actions overcomes the issues that are slowing them down. Timescales might be different because owners, an owner might want it out in 3 years because they're turning 60 or 55. They tend to have a time frame that they've got in mind. It might be 3, it might be 5, it might be 10.
So how important is that, knowing that their exit strategy earlier on, and then in developing that?
I think there's, when you look at it, one big failing that some owners look at is, they wake up today and decide they want to sell. And they want out in the next month. I mean, it is possible, but the compromises you're going to have to make could be big discount on the price that you could potentially achieve. You'll have to work in the business for 2 years rather than 6 months. You might only get 25% of the deal price up front. The rest is all earn out to make sure it doesn't fall apart. And they might require, so the longer running you can get, the more you can actually put the business in place. If you think you have to build an entire management team, for example, or create a succession plan, you can't do that in 3 months while you're also trying to sell the business.
I was just thinking about that as you were talking. It's that kind of, and this is probably where people don't actually, when we came back to the role of a CFO, it's like that being able to sort of get under the skin of the business, be able to roll out strategies, whether it's operational or people or structural or digitization, but then the ability to do the financing and the restructuring at the end from an exit. And then obviously I'm guessing you're going to liaise with all the different external parties as well. That's a pretty wide skill set.
Yeah. But a lot of it is project management and being able to influence and being able to sit down and question and listen and not have a preconceived idea of what you're going to do. But I mean, we're talking about time frame. If another one is owners, I'll pick a number that they want to, maybe 5 million.
Yeah.
I'm going to sell my business for 5 million. I'm going to walk away the same day. But if you apply a multiplier to the earnings that they're currently making, they might need to be making £1 million in profit, and they're only at 250. I mean, putting that realism in and say, well, that's fine if you want that number, but this is the setup you need. These are the people you're going to have to bring in. Actually, the market that you're working in just now in this locale is saturated. You're not going to grow enough to get to that number. It starts putting it starts making it real what needs to be done to get there.
Yeah. I suppose that's you then sort of having in a position where you're giving some pretty stark advice, I suppose, at certain points. I suppose you're giving. I suppose it's and it's your role to give that level of advice, because obviously being realistic about where you are allows you to set the benchmark and the foundation of where you need to get to.
Yeah.
But I can imagine there's some pretty difficult conversations that come out of that.
But I think that's just the role of an FD or a CFO in general. Now, you have to balance that off with never being negative. You've got to be able to say no, but as opposed to just no. But I remember being in as an interim and surrounded by 14 managers, all speaking to the owner, and I was one out of the 14 that was saying, no, this doesn't work. And it's interesting.
I suppose it depends how compelling your argument.
Yeah, but again, if you've got a difference of opinion, you need to be able to say why and quantify it, and that's fine. But I sat in that meeting, and it dawned on me that the reason I was quite happy saying no as a consultant who could basically get ditched the next day was that I wasn't dependent on that money, whereas a lot of the managers sitting around the table are dependent on their salary, so they don't want to rock the boat. So you need that level of independence that almost doesn't care if you say, no, I'm sacking you.
Yeah.
Because you need that level of independence. You need to be able to do it. But it is a case of being able to articulate why that's an issue, or why there may be a better way of getting the same result.
And I think a business owner would absolutely value that. And I mean, challenge is one of Northern Accountants' key values for that reason, because it's sometimes you can get caught up in groupthink and echo chambers, whatever you want to call it, and you just get the momentum, and suddenly somebody just needs to put a hand up and go. And it's, to be fair, it's for somebody coming outside the business, you just see it completely differently, don't you? Because you haven't got caught up in that momentum.
You've got no axe in it.
You're just looking at it on face value.
The flip side of it is, because you're from the outside looking in, an owner might not always take your advice.
Yes.
And you've got to accept that. It's only advice. It may be well-intentioned, it may be well-argued, it may be logical and all the rest of it, but occasionally they'll just say, no, this is what I'm doing.
I do like to trumpet the, there's no such thing as a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Just because I come out with loads of stupid ideas.
Yeah,
but I think, if 9 of them drop, but one of them sticks, that's invaluable. Because you've changed the course of the business with that idea or that challenge. Yeah,
but I think it's throwing them out and being able to assess them and say, yes, that works, or no, it doesn't work. It's when you don't throw them out. I was just going to say, there's a story of a guy that worked in R&D at 3M, and they asked him why he looked at every idea and every opportunity with the same depth of understanding, and he said, well, it's difficult to find a diamond in the rough that it just looks like a stone. So you have to be very careful about how you assess it and how you look at it to make sure you're not throwing away a diamond.
Yeah, and they've not done too badly, have they?
They've done all right over the years.
So do you feel like, because obviously when you're coming into certain size businesses with your wealth of experience, do you feel like there's a danger of kind of dominating the conversation, or do you think or are you very kind of mindful of drawing the information out and almost pause, letting the floor speak, I suppose?
I think there's two dangers. One's dominating the conversation, and one's going in with a preconceived answer and forcing that on someone.
That's a really good point.
And I'm very conscious of that. Especially if it's a business that's very close to one I've been involved in or one I've run, because you see a lot of it before, and I'm very conscious of not just saying, oh, you need to do X, Y, Z, because that's what we did 10 years ago. And it's not what you did 10 years ago might not be relevant now, but it's taking that experience. So I spend a lot of time asking questions and just listening, and then coming back and confirming that answers, or maybe asking questions a slightly different way just to double check, and then trying to, it might be guidance, because you've got a bias, whatever way you go, you've got a bias, and it's trying to minimize that down, because what worked for you won't work for someone else, because it's different personalities, different times, different business, different team that they're working with, and all the rest of it. So it's trying to get the thing that will work, that resonates with them, based on the experience you've had, rather than just giving a cookie cutter picture.
Yeah. So do you think that's the hardest part of your role as this fractional CFO, or is there something that you particularly struggle with?
It's hard for me not just to say, oh, you just need to do this. Really hard.
Yeah.
But because it worked in the circumstances I was in at a particular point in time doesn't mean it's the right answer.
I suppose the fact that you've got that wealth of experience does help, and you've managed to you've worked in all these different industries. I suppose it does give you a lot of credibility when it comes to opinion. Yeah,
and you also have to be careful with that. We did one before. We did a strategy day like years ago in a business, and I was in as interim FD, and we were paired up. The entire management team were paired up. I was paired up with the MD, and we weren't allowed to speak until everyone else had put out theirs, because the FD and the MD, as soon as they said something, that was
everybody agrees.
Everybody just goes, that's what we'll do.
No, that makes sense.
So the weight of your opinion matters, and the timing of when you throw it out matters.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to give Rosie credit for this next question, because actually this is a good question.
So that's what I'm going to put on the spot here.
So what do you think is the smartest financial decision you've seen a client make?
Smartest financial decision?
Yeah.
That is a good one, Rosie.
You're wishing you read the questions now.
No. The one I always think of, and I won't name them, But we did a strategy session with a particular client about 3 or 4 years ago who was pretty much burnt out, pretty much at,
your capacity,
absolute capacity, couldn't see a way to grow the business, didn't want to grow the business, effectively wanted out.
Yeah.
And was just done. So we went through a few things, discussed a few options, hearing an idea of the way he wanted to go. I suggested there might be a couple of alternatives. And he took them on board. 3 years later, he's doing treble the amount of business he was doing then. He's working half the number of hours he's doing then, and he's basically got his life back and enjoying life. And has got a good management team, and he doesn't get involved in the day-to-day.
That must give you so much pleasure when you look back and see that.
It does, but I also have to say it was all down to him deciding that's what he wanted to do. So it's not necessarily the smartest financial decision, but the
best result.
It's the best result I've seen in a long, long time in terms of them. It's an investment in their own time and deciding how best they want to spend their own time.
I imagine a story like that gives a lot of people hope.
Yeah.
I suppose a couple of the questions that we tend to wrap these sessions up with is, the first one is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Do what you enjoy and back yourself. A lot of people, certainly early stages, they'll say Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos and say, I want to do that, and they just chase money. And it's important, but you need to be doing something you enjoy doing and finding a niche to get on it. So if you work hard, do what you enjoy doing, everything else will come.
I suppose the obvious question is, did you enjoy driving forklift trucks?
I did, actually.
So maybe that's what we go back to.
There's always an option for driving forklifts.
I could never manage the big stuff into little places, though.
Do you know the thing that that particular... I used to go on the tools once a month just to not keep my hand in, but certainly see what the boys were going through and all the rest of it. And I'd be absolutely shard. I don't know how they did it every day. No amount of gym work.
Can come close to that.
When you see something that's 40 or 50 ton getting taken out of a warehouse with 4 or 5 inches to spare on either side, it's phenomenal.
It's just mind blowing, isn't it? And they're so good at it as well.
The guys are brilliant.
But again, I suppose it comes back to having those sorts of experiences means that you can relate to so many different types of businesses you work with, because it's but
I don't know if it's a downside. It's certainly a downside for my kids, because I was at Tekka, the P&J Live in Aberdeen at the weekend. At a concert, the Ollie Murs concert.
All right.
And I'm sitting in the main arena saying, well, we put that in, we did this, we did that.
Boring me down.
Yeah, I'm showing pictures in between sets. And I said, I even was on a zip line across this arena. So,
That's cool. So
it's cool for me, it's not cool for them.
Yeah. No, I like stuff like that. So I suppose, and then last question is, what advice would you give to people running their own business?
It's not much advice as such. I guess it's skills that they really need to master. One's being able to prioritize, being able to figure out what things are going to move the dial and what things are just noise. And once you can kind of figure out those, a lot of owners jump up and down at the thing that lands on their desk that day, and that becomes the most important thing, or a phone call, and they're very reactive. And
sequencing is so important in those.
So once you've figured out the priorities, you can sequence it, and the next piece is being a really good delegator. And I don't mean just saying go and do that. It's making sure that people understand what they're doing, what the expectation is, the quality that they're giving back. So if you prioritize what you have to work on, you know what you can then delegate. And it flows.
And if you're giving that clarity to the surrounding team, everybody's happy at that point.
And then the final bit is being able to deal with issues logically rather than emotionally, because business isn't really about emotion. It's all about what's the best decision you can make today with imperfect information. You will never have the benefit of hindsight to know what is the right decision. You just have to be able to be comfortable making decisions with imperfect information.
Excellent. That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
That was enjoyable.
Thanks,
Learned a
Ben.
lot. Thank you. So thanks for watching, and we would love you to like and subscribe. So please hit the notification bell and keep updated with all things Dear Diaries.